Today for our ACT Science Review, we will be looking at the questions and answers from Passage 6. Passage 6 is a research summaries passage. If we read through the introductory paragraph, quickly we can see that our passage is about mixing household chemicals, specifically bleach and ammonia. And when we mix those two, what are the byproducts that we're looking at? Experiment 1 is looking at the byproduct from the bleach and ammonia mixture of chlorine gas. So, in this experiment, we're going to vary the quantities of bleach in our ammonia water and then measure the amount of chlorine gas that is produced. Off on our y-axis, we see the amount of chlorine produced, and on our x-axis, we see the amount of bleach added. In experiment 2, we're going to be looking at a different byproduct, nitrogen trichloride. Again, we're going to vary the amount of bleach and keep the amount of ammonia constant. All right, and we're going to see how much ammonia trichloride is produced in each experiment. Again, I'm going to draw my trend lines. So as I go from trial 1 to 8, I see that I am increasing the amount of bleach, and as a result, I'm increasing the amount of nitrogen trichloride that is produced. In experiment 3, we're going to look at yet another byproduct, chloramine. However, in this experiment, we're going to vary the amount of ammonia and not the amount of bleach. We're going to hold the amount of bleach constant. And then we're going to be looking at the amount of chloramine produced as we vary the level of ammonia. Again, as we go from trial 1 to trial 8, we see that our ammonia level increases, and so does the amount of chloramine. Question 31. Which of the following is the most likely reason that amounts greater than 3 moles of bleach were not tested in experiment 1? The results showed what? This is a pattern question. So let's bring back our graph from experiment 1 and let's look at the amount of chlorine produced. So between 0.25 moles and 1 mole, we see a huge increase in the amount of chlorine that's being produced. And then as we go from 1 mole of bleach down to 2.5 moles, we see a decrease. So we sort of peaked and then came back down. After 2.5 moles, our results taper off, and so we can make a prediction that we will be continuing along that same line. So there's really no need for us to test it after 2.5, 3 moles. Which gives us answer choice C. Adding more bleach no longer increased the level of ammonia. Question 32. Based on the results of experiment 3, as the NH3 level increased from 0.5 to 4 mole, the greatest increase in the amount of NH2Cl produced occurred between which two amounts? Now, this is a detailed question, but it's a little different than what we've seen before. What it's asking us to do is to look at the difference between each of the trials that it's shown in our answer choices. So if we just put our answer choices onto our table, we should be able to see the difference. So between 0.5 and 1, we see a difference of 0.03. Between 1.5 and 2.0, we see a difference again of 0.03. And between 2.5 and 3, we see a difference of 0.04. And then between 3.5 and 4, we see a difference of 0.02. So our answer choice is H, between 2.5 and 3, because that was our biggest gap here, as you see over on the table. Question 33. If a 9th trial were conducted in experiment 3, adding 1.25 moles of NH3 to the bleach water solution, the amount of NH2Cl produced would be closest to what? This is a pattern question. It's an interpolation question. It's asking us to look between two data points. So if I go to my table for this experiment and I find 1.25 between trial 2 and 3, I'm going to go to my results and I'm going to look for a result or an answer choice that fits in between those two results, which for us is answer choice B. Question 34. Each of the following is a byproduct resulting from mixing bleach and ammonia, except what? So this is a detail question, and it's actually a pretty simple detail question. At the beginning of each experiment, it talks about one of the byproducts that's being made. So in experiment 1, it says that one of our byproducts is chlorine gas. In experiment 2, it says one of our byproducts is nitrogen trichloride. And in experiment 3, it says one of our byproducts is chloramine, which means the only one not listed is H, which is also referenced in our passage as being the formula for bleach. Question 35. The production of a certain plastic calls for a mixture of bleach and ammonia. However, the presence of chlorine gas is highly undesirable. Based on the results of experiments 1, 2, and 3, which of the following specifications should be chosen? This is an inference question. And it's actually a little tricky because the only experiment that talks about the production of chlorine gas is experiment 1. So that's the only experiment that we can use here. So if we pull up our figure from experiment 1, we're looking for the areas where chlorine gas is the lowest, which occurs above 2 and below 0.5. So if you go through each of your answer choices, right away, answer choice A should stick out to you because you want to get above 2. You're trying to get as high above 2 as you possibly can. Question 36. In experiment 2, different quantities of bleach were added to the ammonia solution, resulting in the production of nitrogen trichloride. The amounts of nitrogen trichloride were produced for 3, 3.5, and 4 moles of bleach added were approximately the same. Which of the following best explains why the production of nitrogen trichloride was limited based on the observations and the results of the experiment? This is a scientific method question. So if I go back to the table from this trial, it's talking about these 3 trials right here, where if you notice over in the results, they're about the same. Now, this is one of the few questions on the ACT where they actually expect you to know some science. And the science that they expect you to know here is the idea of a limiting reactant. And that just means that if I'm mixing 2 ingredients, that they will react until one of my ingredients runs out. Once that one ingredient runs out, my reaction will stop. This leads us to answer choice J. This is our last question for today. But I want to reiterate the fact that when you're coming into the Science ACT, you're not actually required to know a lot of science. This question here is sort of an exception to that rule. This is, I think, the only question that we've looked at so far that's actually expected you to know something coming into the test. But rest assured, there are only 2 or 3 questions like this on an entire Science ACT passage. Again, that's all for today.